Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. We are starting one more live stream. Today is Wednesday, August the 20th, 12:31 Rio de Janeiro time, and we are just getting started. We do have like a participation already. Is Renata? Good to see you over here, Renata. And Renata is asking, my husband is American. Last year he got a tourist visa to Brazil, but has since gotten a new passport. Does he need it to reapply? So Renata, typically not. So if you have one of the old visas, right, like the one that is stamped on a passport, even if it is like a prior passport, the stamped visa would be valid until the expiration date. Now, in terms of the e-visa, right? If your husband got last year, I'm going to assume it was an e-visa. So the e-visa at the beginning of the issuance, it was designed to last for as long as the passport would be valid, meaning that if your passport would expire in a couple of years, the e-visa would expire along with it. So that was the original intent of the e-visa. But I think it was a couple of months ago, there was an update by the Brazilian government trying to reduce, like the burden on American citizens. They decided that the e-visa would remain valid even if the passport originally associated with the e-visa would expire, right? So I would say most probably you're going to be just fine, particularly because you have like a valid e-visa, but because there was like this first period of time in which the e-visa was supposed to expire along with the passport, I am unable to guarantee that this is going to work. But I would say most probably you're just fine. Something you could do, you could reach out to the e-visa support service and just make sure that your e-visa, even though it was issued last year, that is still good for the new passport. All right, Renata, good to see you. Always happy to see recurring friends showing up here at the live stream. Kobe Schaub, if I make my own LLC and hire myself, would it be possible to get a digital nomad visa this way? Or would it be not allowed if the creation of the LLC is recent? I'm self-employed. Kobe, here at the firm, and I'm going to assume you're talking about the Brazil digital nomad because like the Portuguese one is a different story. But for the Brazilian one, we actually have many clients who own their own LLC, okay? And another distinction to keep in mind is that if you are applying through a consulate in the United States, it's somewhat difficult to understand or to forecast the standards that they are going to apply. In our experience, consulates, they do not specialize in immigration. They are typically busier handling stuff for Brazilians. And whenever you are applying for a visa, there is going to be some level of discrepancy among the different immigration officers. So some people, they are going to have one interpretation, and another one is going to have something different. So typically, we are able to tell you exactly how things work when you apply in Brazil, physically in Brazil, because when you apply in Brazil, there is not like a kind of discretion or as much discretion as you would see in a consulate. When you're applying in Brazil, you are actually applying through a single department that's going to handle all the applications done throughout the 27 states in Brazil. And therefore, it's easier to forecast the results. And whenever we are assisting clients with applications in Brazil, we are typically helping people who have their own LLCs, right? Now, how you're going to present your paperwork is also going to, impact on how much, or how easy the paperwork is going to be accepted by the, Brazilian immigration in Brazil. Okay, but yes, we have many clients with this paperwork. And we typically, right, like just to share some tips, and we do have even like a template that we use for, self employed people like you when you hire our services, of course. But just like a final tip, you need to focus on the requirements, right? Like, you're not going to be presenting a bunch of papers about the company, because nobody's asking you about the company, right? Like, they're asking about you as an applicant. So my recommendation is for you to focus on the application and you as the applicant instead of the company, if that makes sense. All right, Kobe, but good to see you again. And as usual, we're going to take a look at the news. But before we do so, I want to share, we have now an ad for Remax. As some of you may know, like we are partnering up with a specific Remax in Brazil. So it's not with every single Remax, that's a particular Remax based in Rio de Janeiro. And even though they are based in Rio de Janeiro, they actually serve clients throughout the country. And you're going to see the name, particularly for Kobe, right, who just asked about the digital nomad. Here is the ad for this partnership that we are developing with Max to know the United States. I think the name says all. And as you can see, our clients throughout the states. You can make a note in terms of contacts with them. And the nature of our partnership is that they are going to try to provide a service that will follow our typical guidelines, right? So that's particularly helpful for those of you who don't want to, spend money on a law firm. Some people, and we have no problem with that, right? Like, some people, they are going to be very happy to hire our services. These are the good matches. Some of you would rather, save the money, and then if that's the case, you can work it directly with the real estate agency, and they do follow many or probably most of our standard, right? It's not guaranteed, and you're not going to have a lot to do, but there you go. Now let's take a look. Let's take a look at the news. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what's going on with the news in Brazil. All right, so very rare for that to happen. Like, the main headline is not about the United States, right? The main headline is actually about a merge between. Actually, it is about the United States. I'm just like, I was reading the headline that I read like 10 minutes ago before starting this live stream. But guess what? They couldn't help themselves. And they just replaced the headline about a local merge in Brazil. There was a merge between Banco Master and another bank in Brazil. That was the headline 10 minutes ago. But just because I came to the live stream with that headline, now they went back, or they changed it to a headline addressing the United States. And that's just how it is, right? Like, pretty much almost every day, almost always, like, the main headline is going to be about the United States. It's like a fixation, I think you can tell. So here it says banks are reaching out to the ministries of the Brazilian Supreme Court after a decision by Flávio Dino. Flávio Dino is one of the ministers. He's one of the, ministers who got started. I think he was the last one to be referred to the Supreme Court by President Lula. And Flávio Dino, right, like, not surprisingly, like, he's, jumping the guns, to protect President Lula. And Minister Alexandre de Moraes. Alexandre de Moraes is aligned with Lula, and I would assume most of you know about the ongoing dispute between Brazil and the United States. The U.S., the President Trump administration applied the Magnitsky law against Minister Alexandre de Moraes for curbing free speech in the country, and not only that, for persecuting political opponents as well, right? And here, like Flávio Dino, one of the ministers, they said that no decisions from abroad should have any effect in Brazil unless the Supreme Court would allow specifically for that decision to have an effect in Brazil, right? So that's the nature of the decision that is being commented here at Estadão, which is like probably the second largest newspaper in Brazil, very traditional. It has been around for 150 years. Okay, but again, main headline is about the ongoing dispute between Brazil and the United States. All right. There is also, news about, President Lula. 46% of the population is favorable to President Lula, and I believe 51%, yes, 51% is like, disapproves President Lula's administration. There was also, and they refreshed the main page. There was also a headline about the U.S., sending some ships to Venezuela's coastal area. All right, so these are the main news. Happy to comment or discuss any topic of your interest. Remember, we don't need to discuss just legal stuff, right? If you want to bring in new topics, we are going to be happy to discuss live here. Let's take a look back and see what else is being asked or suggested in terms of topics. You have a Kobe, thanks. Also, I saw this person named Swedish Gringo in a video. His lawyer said that renewing the visa 4 times can lead to a PR. Is that true? Kobe, not the digital nomad, right? I'm not going to comment on another lawyer's opinion or on another's channel opinion, but the digital nomad does not lead to permanent residency, right? And the way you can tell when a specific visa or residency is going to lead to permanent residency in Brazil is by reading the regulation behind the visa. Okay, so when you read the digital nomad, it actually states that it should be renewable for 1 year. So it's not even meant to be renewed for up to 4 years, even though as we speak, yes, the administration is renewing for a second time. We have many clients who were able to renew for a second time, but the digital nomad does not represent a route to permanent residency. I cannot comment on what other channels or attorneys think about the process, but I can tell you how it works. All right. Aaron, good to see you, Aaron. Aaron Lopez. Kobe Schaub, I saw the same. I don't think it's accurate because he ended up going the real estate investment route. Thank you for chiming in, Aaron. And Kobe, no problem about sharing, right? I just don't want to get into a, he said, we said type of thing, but, feel free to share such, pieces of information. It's always helpful for us to actually clarify, requirements and the dynamics of the visas and legal residencies in Brazil. Nice sharing, Kobe. Thank you for chiming in, Aaron. All right, so let me see here if we have any other inputs. Not so far. And yes, all right. And there is even, Chigo, he sure did, Aaron. He purchased a penthouse. It looks like you guys are all tuned up in terms of the strategies. Yes, like, investment in real estate remains as a very solid route for you to secure, first it starts with a 4-year temporary residency, and then after 4 years, that's when you can secure the permanent residency. And after the permanent residency, after 4 years of permanent residency, that's when you can apply for the citizenship. And that's another point of common misunderstanding, I would say, in the expat and digital nomad community. Many people, they think after just 4 years of residency in Brazil through real estate, you could potentially apply for the citizenship, but that's not the case. That's another misconception. That's another piece of wrong information, very typically shared out there, right? So let me just repeat. So it is crystal clear how it works. You buy a property, you're gonna apply for residency under the real estate investor, either visa or residency. And then you're going to get 4 years, typically 4 years. And these 4 years, they are going to be a temporary residency, right? Very specifically, temporary residency. So it's not going to give you a shot at citizenship by any, means or stretch of imagination, right? Again, 4 years of temporary residency. After those 4 years, or better saying, let's say a couple of months or 3 months before the 4 years expire, you're going to apply for the renewal of your real estate residency, investor residency. And this time you're going to ask for the residency to be issued as permanent. And as long as you have all the paperwork, as long as you still have the same property, not a different property, right? The same property, as long as you have a clean background check, as long as you meet the other requirements, you're going to get the permanent residency, right? So again, 4 years of temporary residency, and then you get the permanent residency. And only after you secure the permanent residency, that's when time starts to count for you to apply for the Brazilian citizenship. All right, so I hope that was helpful. There you go. Bill's in the house. Good to see you, Bill. Always good to see Bill. Bill has been supporting our channel for a long while. Thank you so much, Bill. Alexandro Marinica, bom dia. Bom dia, Alexandro. Very interesting. That's Alexandro is not like, at least like among our clients, is not a really common name, Alexandro. But we have another client named Alexandro as we speak. I'm not mentioning the last name, right? Like, so nobody is going to know who he is. And he's using our service actually for litigation. All right. Joe, welcome, Joe. After getting the visa residency, how long it will take to have the residency card while you're waiting for it in Brazil? Jojo, so this timeline changes every now and then. Like there was a period of time, in which, you could get it in just a few days. Nowadays, probably because of the demand, and it looks like there was a couple of machines issuing the RNM card, and then one machine broke, and there is just one in Brasilia. That was the last update I heard several months ago, but it is typically taking, in average, a couple of months after the day in which you receive the protocolo, right? The protocolo is going to be a printout of the RNM card. So it's not the actual card. Again, it's just a printout. And let me show you the card. This is the card that we're talking about. That's the resident card, right? So something also interesting to share, even if you apply for a visa abroad, like a long-term visa, right? I'm not talking about a tourist visa. But let's say if you apply for the digital nomad visa in the let's say Chicago, in the Brazilian consulate in Chicago, the Brazilian consulate in Houston, or Atlanta, or New York, once you get the visa stamped on your passport, you are still required to register in Brazil to have your residency, right? So the visa is just like a pathway for you to stay for the long term in Brazil. But once you are in Brazil, you are expected or required by law to register with the Brazilian Federal Police. And on the day of the registration, typically, if you have all the paperwork compliant, you're gonna get a printout, a single piece of paper showing this very same information that you see over here. So it's gonna show your picture, your name, your parents' names, date of birth, and also the type of residency that you are getting out of your application. Okay, and then once you get this paper, after a couple of months, the card is going to be typically available, and they are not going to ship this card to you. You need to go back and pick up the card. Usually you receive an email saying, all right, the card is ready. You can come over and pick up the card. All right. So just letting you know how it works, the dynamic. Something else that may be interesting, Jojo, to you is that you can send someone over to pick up the card on your behalf, as long as you have a compliant power of attorney with a very specific type of signature validation that we call by authentication, right? Like or por autenticidade, right? Or it's not by authentication, it's by authenticity. And the concept here is that, when you take the power of attorney to the registry, you need to sign before the notary or officer. So they need to see you signing the power of attorney, and they also need to compare your signature to a document that you're going to show to the notary, right? And you also need to ask, listen, I want this, I want my signature to be confirmed by autenticidade, right? So that's something, it may sound like something minor, but if you don't do that, if they just, authenticate the signature by similarity, which is another type of, validations of signatures at the notary level, typically the Brazilian Federal Police, they are not going to accept the power of attorney, right? So we've been there, and we are now sharing with you, so you don't need to incur in the same mistake. There is a very special type of authentication or validation of your signature. But if you get this power of attorney, Jojo, in this case, you can send someone to pick up the card on your behalf. All right. Okay, Voyages. Good to see you, Voyages. Hello. Hi, Sir Luciano. Appreciate the news time before the conversation immigration topics. We hope you're having a great day so far. Yes, Voyages. I'm here with you guys, and I'm certainly enjoying my day. I hope you are as well. Kobe, what if someone with a digital nomad gives birth in Brazil? Does this lead to PR? Yes, Kobe, yes. And that's actually something that we actually share in our live streams. Like sometimes the digital nomad may look like something kind of hopeless, right? Because it doesn't lead to anything, at least from the dynamics of the digital nomad itself. However, what we see happening very often is that someone is going to start a journey under the digital nomad, and over time they are going to arrive at another factual pattern that is going to allow them to get something else. So for instance, if you've been in Brazil for 2 or 3 years, maybe you're going to find love in Brazil, and you could apply under either marriage or a civil union. Or you could also, just like you said, if you happen to have a child in Brazil, even though the digital nomad is going to have no effect on the application for permanent residency. Guess what? Now that you have a child born in Brazil, you are entitled to apply for the permanent residency right away. There is no, waiting period of time. Like once you apply, if you meet the other requirements such as a clean black background check and other documents, guess what? Yes, you're gonna get the permanent residency based on the fact that you have a child who's also a Brazilian national. Very interesting point, Kobe. Aaron, good morning, Luciano. I am curious, is Bolsonaro allowed to run for presidency in 2026? Is he more in favor of foreigners getting paths to citizenship versus Lula? Interesting question, Aaron. So right now he's not eligible, right? You may not know, but as we speak, the Brazilian Supreme Court is persecuting or prosecuting Bolsonaro for a crime, right? And in addition to that, it was also decided by, a lower court that he could not participate in the race for, the federal government in 2026, because of some reason I don't recall, okay? But as of today, he's not allowed. And in terms of, favoring foreigners, I would say for sure, right? And President Lula, he's not against foreigners in general. I just think, there is a very bad blood between President Lula, not only President Lula, but his party as a whole and the United States, right? Like there is a lot of hate or hatred in the President Lula's party against the United States, and this has been historical, right? Like I'm not just talking about one or two elections, but there was there is a very close ally of President Lula who actually participated in the kidnapping of a consular officer of the United States. I don't know, it was probably like 40 or 50 years ago. And she was actually a president of Brazil, right? It was a very weird situation because naturally she couldn't even travel to the United States because of the kidnapping. But once she became a president, then, the United States changed that policy. But this is just to illustrate that this bad blood between PT, which is like Partido dos Trabalhadores, which is President Lula's party, and the United States is nothing new, right? And this is across the board, people who align with, President Lula's party, typically, they don't like the United States, right? Like they have this whole ideology of, favoring China instead of the United States, of fighting the use of the US dollar as an international currency. This is just a recurring theme among President Lula's administration, right? So President Bolsonaro is exactly the opposite, right? Like President Bolsonaro is a very close ally of President Trump. And, he was actually responsible for most of the things we've been discussing here today. So the digital nomad visa was created under President Bolsonaro's administration. The current Brazil retirement visa, guess what? It was created under President Bolsonaro, and so was the Brazil investment visa, right? So I think, just those visas by themselves, they speak volume in terms of the approach of President Bolsonaro when it comes to foreign citizens, all right? So, all right, James. Olá, I got my digital nomad visa approved, applying for Fortaleza. Congratulations, James. And have an appointment with the federal police next week. After that, how long it takes to get my R&M card? Obrigado. James, I just answered this very same question. It was actually asked by Jojo, right? So, just to summarize, I'm not going to repeat the whole dynamic again, but, after this appointment at the Polícia Federal, you're going to get a printout typically on the same day. It's going to come with your resident number already, all right? But this piece of paper is not really helpful because if you try, for instance, to open a bank account, banks, they're going to look at the paper and they're not going to like it, right? But the paper, the protocol, right, this kind of application receipt is going to be good because it does give you some peace of mind that you are legally residing in the country. And typically, a couple of months later, you're going to receive an email to go back to Polícia Federal and then pick up the card, right? You can also use a power of attorney. It needs to be done in a very specific manner. Most people who try to do by themselves, it doesn't work at the end. But there is a very specific way for you to do a power of attorney in order to have someone else picking up the card in the event that you're not going to be around when they call you to pick up the card, all right? Okay, I hope that was helpful. Kobe, thanks for the responses. You're very welcome, Kobe. Aaron, with the tension between the U.S. and Brazil, are you seeing more crimes targeting foreigners or U.S. citizens? Aaron, not necessarily crimes. I think, that us, Brazilians, we do like a lot, the U.S. citizens, right? Like, we love Hollywood movies. We like everything that comes from the United States. And it is just like something temporary, right? And I just hope that this whole situation goes away as soon as possible because it's really, it's really sad to see this, poor relationship between Brazil and the U.S. But something we see happening, Aaron, actually, and we are starting to unfortunately share with our clients is that. Sometimes, right? Sometimes a Brazilian immigration agent, it looks like they are going to ignore some type of regulation to apply a fine to a U.S. citizen. And something that we saw happening at least a couple of times, it goes like this. Like the person applies for a residency, they are in Brazil, and the law says that during the timeline in which you are waiting for an answer, you should be allowed to stay legally in Brazil and wait for that decision without any fines, right? And what we saw happening a couple of times is that the federal police agents, they would still apply a fine. And upon being said, listen, I spoke with my attorney, they said I can stay here. It does not make any sense for you to apply this fine. They would say, well, that's your problem. Now you can fight the fine. And off you go, all right? So there was a couple of times, but, given the volume of clients we have, I would say, Aaron, that, fortunately, even though I think it does show some bad faith by those agents who did that, the vast majority of our U.S. clients, they are, proceeding their lives, as usual, in Brazil, all right? And from the Brazilian population in general, trust me, there is no bad blood. We know that, this whole, dispute is between the Brazilian federal government and the United States, right? The population, I believe most of the population is not for sure aggravated by, the United States, all right? Which I think it's a good thing. Jojo, I'm planning to hire for my residency. I would like to know if the consultation fee will be deducted from the service fee. Thanks. Yes, Jojo, yes. This is typical, right? Whenever you have a consultation with us, the first consultation, right? The amount that you pay for the first consultation is applied as a credit to the services being hired, right? Now, if you happen to have multiple consultations, some people, they have 1, 2, or 3 consultations before they pull the trigger. Only the first consultation is going to apply as a credit. Something else we are starting this week, we're going to have 2 different levels of consultation. So far, we have just one level of consultation. Is the same amount, is the same type of, service you're gonna get, the same level of advisor that you're gonna get. But starting this week, we are offering like a junior attorney advisory, right? So for people who don't wanna pay like for a consultation with a more senior attorney, you could have a consultation with a junior attorney, right? Something also interesting to share, Jojo, and that's something very typical to our law firm, is not typical of other law firms. We don't provide advisory to self-applicants, right? So if we realize you're just gonna have your questions answered and you're gonna use someone else, to handle the application, or you're gonna try to do by yourself, we're not gonna provide the consultation. And the reason for that is because most of the time, people are gonna run into trouble by trying to do by themselves. And unfortunately, it's very common that when people run into trouble, they are gonna blame someone else, right? So if you come to us, you have a consultation, and then you go out there and your application doesn't work, there is a probability that you're gonna try to find someone to blame. And we don't like this approach, and therefore we don't provide consultations only for information, right? And we have this in our terms of service. Whenever you're trying to book the consultation, you're gonna see over there, if you are a self-applicant, if we can tell you're gonna self-apply, if you're not gonna use our services, then we are, kind of cancel the consultation and naturally refund you in full, right? But that's something for you to know. And yes, if you're gonna hire our services, yes, the consultation amount is applied in full as a credit. All right. Okay, let's take a look at what else we have. And thank you for considering hiring us, Jojo. That's always, I'm always happy to hear that, right? We are always happy to help people in their journeys towards residency in Brazil. Chigo, for the retirement visa, do I need to show that I'm withdrawing funds monthly from my retirement account? Will this be sufficient proof? Chigo, yes, Brazil is going to require you to show at least 3 months of draws, right? So you need to be drawing money from your retirement accounts before you can apply. 401k typically works, but it's not the ideal. That's not the ideal retirement type of income, right? Like the 3 main ones, the ones that we feel like really, really, sure about, are gonna be Social Security, pension funds, and either disability or VA, right? One of those 3 things. The 401k, naturally, I know it is like, a very typical type of retirement account for the United States, as it is, the IRA, the traditional IRA, the Roth IRA. Some people, they have, life insurance policies, they have annuities, right? So there is a bunch of things that are typical to the United States, but they are not typical to Brazil. So what we see happening is that when you present a 401k, sometimes the agent reviewing the paperwork, they don't see that as a traditional requirement. Okay, so whenever you seek our services, like, we're gonna try to, first demonstrate to the agent that you are using like a fully compliant retirement source of income in the United States, right? And your application is also going to be provided to the Brazilian immigration as supported by a licensed attorney and law firm in Brazil, which I think it does help a bit, right? Like, it's not going to convince them to approve something that should not be approved. But many times when there is like a gray area, and they see that you're being represented, most probably they are going to tend, to rule favorable to you instead of otherwise. All right, Tigo. So, and you're going to need many other documents, right? because you're asking like, is this sufficient proof, right? Like, so you're gonna need to show the money's entering your bank account, like through the bank statements. You're also gonna need like a summary of the retirement funds. So they're gonna want to see your 401k paperwork as well. You're also gonna need a letter confirming that your bank is capable of wiring the funds to Brazil, which is, very interesting. It's not the case for every single bank. It's probably the case for every single major bank. But when you deal with California, for instance, like I don't know what happens to California, but there are like hundreds, if not thousands of banks, like, tiny banks, providing checking accounts and so on. So, many of those Californian banks, guess what? They are unable to wire funds to Brazil. So another thing you're going to need to show, it's a letter from your bank stating very clearly that you can wire funds to Brazil, right? Some banks, they refuse to issue that letter. Then we have a strategy to try to, provide enough reassurance to the Brazilian immigration that you're still going to be able to send the funds. But there are, about 5 different documents, Chigo, that you're going to need to present to support your retirement as compliant to the Brazilian rules for the Brazil retirement visa or residency. All right, Chigo. Bill, click the like button. Thank you for reminding me, Bill. Yes, please do so. If you are enjoying our live stream, I would really appreciate if you could just click on the like button. If you want to subscribe to our channel, to follow us for more tips, you are, of course, very welcome to do so. Thank you for the reminder, Bill. We have Moses. Moses, after submitting all the necessary documents to the Ministry of Justice, how long does it take to get approval for a real estate investment visa for a client from a country that require a visa to visit Brazil? Right. So, Moses, I assume what you're saying over here is like, I'm going to mention, right, like a strategy here. I'm not sure if that's what Moses is asking, but some people, right, they may face a challenge to enter Brazil, right? So they could potentially buy a real estate remotely from abroad, okay? And we have clients with that type of challenge. They cannot travel to Brazil. So the strategy goes like this. They're going to buy real estate remotely through representation of a law firm. After they bought the property, we would file an application for the real estate investor visa. This application starts actually in Brazil. And then once Brazil approves the paperwork, we're going to send this application to the embassy or consulate in charge of our client's country, right? So that's more or less a strategy that Moses is mentioning over here. And once we present all the paperwork in Brazil, Moses, typically is going to take a couple of months for the paperwork to be reviewed. Okay, there is a lot of requirements, right, for this work to be done remotely. It's difficult to pinpoint an exact timeline, but your question was very specific, right? After filing the application, how long does it take for the approval to occur? Typically a couple of months, Moses. Aaron, if someone wants to apply for the retirement visa, do they have to be in perfect health? My mother has congested heart failure, but she may want to join me in Brazil once I get citizenship. Aaron, very interesting question. Typically, we don't need to present any paperwork supporting the applicant's health, right? Very different from what you see in the United States. In the United States, whenever you are pursuing permanent residency, you're going to need to bend backwards in order to provide the ton of reassurances that the United States is going to be looking for before they are going to grant you permanent residency. So you're going to need to do a very thorough physical examination by a physician that was shortlisted by the U.S. consulate in charge of the country, right? So in Brazil, for instance, it's going to be the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro who's going to tell which doctors you can use. You're going to need to do, very comprehensive, like labs, right? So unless you are in good shape, guess what? The United States doesn't want to bring you, right? The United States doesn't want to bring applicants who are going to be overloading the healthcare system in the United States. Not Brazil. Brazil, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Probably a good thing for the applicants, maybe not so good for the country. But in Brazil, at least as of now, or at least for most of the applicants, there is no paperwork addressing the applicant's health. Very interesting question, Aaron. All right, Jojo, thank you. Thank you for showing up, Jojo. Thank you for your participation. Voyages. In regard to your consultations and document processing, do they apply for all types of visa application? I mean, to confirm that you provide assistance with all types of visa to Brazil. Not really, Voyages. Like we don't work with every single visa. There is one that is very typical for us to decline work, and we, believe it or not, we probably decline work for this particular visa every single day, believe it or not. Is going to be the Brazil investor visa in a company, right? Like, so whenever people show up, well, I have here this money, I want to start a business, and I want to secure residency through this business, we say, well, not with us. You're going to, seek help elsewhere. We just don't think it is a good idea for people, to tackle both things together, right? Like, I mean, certainly there are many foreign citizens who achieve success in business in Brazil. However, in our understanding, whenever you are, linking a business effort to immigration, it doesn't sound like a good combination, because the business visa, right? The business investment visa is going to require you to generate employment. Is going to require you, to keep the business alive, and particularly if it is your first business in Brazil, there is a good chance that this business could go under, or you could be, which something that happens very often in Brazil, that you are sued by either current employees or employees that you terminated. Right, so there is so much room for aggravation, Voyages, that we don't want to touch this visa, right? Like, I mean, many applicants, like particularly for people who have used our service in the past, they want to say, listen, I'm going to pay you more. I pay you this amount of money, and we say, listen, that's not something that we believe in, and therefore we're not going to work with that. All right, Voyages. So we don't work with every type of visa. But I would say we do work with most of the visas and residencies. All right, Voyages. Chigo, can I easily open a Brazilian bank account from the U.S. with my CPF? Any additional documents needed to successfully open an account? Chigo, nowadays you can open, right? Now, I'm not sure if I would say easily, okay? Because, like, I'm sure someone is going to type here in the comments, Banco Rendimento, right? That's the first participation you typically see whenever people are asking about banks for non-residents. But very often people come to us after being unable to open the bank account. The main reasons are going to be typically if they are unable to show some type of document, or if they cannot get through the red tape. Okay, so even bancos that are pretty good at providing remote service, such as Banco Rendimento, there is Brasa Bank, there is Banco Topazio, right? Like, they all offer non-resident bank accounts. Sometimes you're busy, like you miss an email, or they're expecting you to do something you don't do, and for those reasons, like, many people, they come to us after trying to open by themselves. But something I'm gonna share with you, Chigo, about the documents, right? we actually have a list of the typical documents. I'm gonna share over here, right? So to get access to this list, you're gonna come to our website, and then you're gonna search for non-resident. As soon as you do non-resident, you're gonna find a page, non-resident bank account set up in Brazil. And then we have a sample list of documents. If you scroll all the way down to the FAQ, you're gonna see the typical list. And this typical list is in our website because that's the typical list for most of the banks, right? So even though we are the ones providing the checklist, it is based on our relationship with the banks that typically open a non-resident bank account, right? As you can see, passport, CPF, tax ID in your country of residency, proof of residency in your country, right? Most recent tax return, the last 3 pay slips, okay? So these are the typical documents. They may ask for additional stuff. Never underestimate, the Brazilian bureaucracy and red tape, all right? So this is just like, a sample list. Always possible for the banks to ask for more stuff, and there may be some substantial back and forth, until you get this account set up, all right? All right. So yes, Chigo, just to finish up the answer. Yes, the CPF, the tax ID is like the most basic, I would say, requirement, because you cannot participate in the Brazilian financial system at any capacity if you don't have the tax ID. But the tax ID is not typically enough. Another interesting point, Chigo, is that you are unable to apply for a regular bank account, right? So when I was showing to you guys, I was showing the non-resident bank account. Now, if you just travel to Brazil, you go to Bradesco, Itaú, and say, well, I want to open a bank account, right? 9 times out of 10, you're going to be, denied a bank account. Very often, the branch personnel, they don't know about the non-resident bank account, okay? So typically visiting a Brazilian bank, it's something you want to do after you secure the resident card, right? Like after you secure the resident card, just as the card's name says, like you are a resident, and therefore you should be able to open a regular bank account. And therefore, the non-resident bank account is going to be helpful for the beginning of your journey, right? So let's say if you're going to apply for the digital nomad, I don't know, like in 2027, but you want to have an account in Brazil, so when you travel, you have access to Pix, right? Pix is like the payment app that has is absolutely king in Brazil, right? Like in Brazil now, even when you are walking around and someone asks you for money, like a beggar person, like they're begging for money. If you say, I don't have cash on me, they're going to say, well, send me a Pix, right? Like it's unbelievable the level of adoption that Pix has in Brazil nowadays, all right? So just sharing that. I hope that was helpful. Voyages, okay, thank you for the answer provided. You're pretty welcome, Voyages. Thank you for showing up. Chigo, não é fácil, it's not easy. Exactly. Thank you for sharing these details with me. Absolutely, Chigo. All right, so we are approaching the end of today's live stream. We're probably gonna take a couple of comments or questions before we finish up, and I'm also gonna let you know about our next dates that we're gonna be together. Okay, so we're gonna skip. We're not gonna have a live stream next week. So we're talking about August the 27th. We are not meeting on the 27th. So our next meeting is going to be on August the 31st, which is a Sunday. So not this coming Sunday, the one after. And then after August the 31st, Sunday, we're going to meet again on Wednesday the 3rd, which is the Wednesday. All right. So we are skipping next Sunday. We're skipping next Wednesday, but then we are back on August the 31st. All right. In case you are missing any piece of information that you would like to have. All right, so before we finish up sharing again about our partnership with Remax, Nomad States Remax, for those of you who are not from the United States, Remax is the largest real estate and residencies. However, they are capable of identifying properties that are going to qualify for the real estate investor visa. All right. So many times people are going to, they're at the beginning of our journey, of their journeys, and they are going to pay us just to qualify the property. You see if that property is good enough for the investment, and that's something that the maximum United States will do. Free of charge for you. So I would say, again, we are not a law firm, we don't have a lawyer, but because they are trying to follow our standards, they will be a very good middle ground. If you're not going to hire an attorney, at least hire a real estate agency that is capable of understanding our requirements. And by the way, to communicate in fluent English, right? That's not common as well, as you probably know. All right, checking out here. Denzio Mason, good to see you, Denzio. Nice stream, Luciano. Cheers. Thank you for showing up, Denzio. And all right, so it looks like we don't have any other questions or participations. I want to say thank you to all of you who came here today and shared your thoughts. Next time we're going to be together, if you want to make sure you're not going to miss our live stream, come to our channel and click on notify me, right? You come to the channel, you click on the live section, you're going to see the dates for our next live streams. We have one scheduled for August the 31st, and the second one is already scheduled for September the 3rd. You just click on notify me, and this way you are assured that you're not going to miss our live stream. Thank you again, and wishing you all a blessed rest of your Wednesday.